everyone. This is Club Rewind.
Welcome to the club.
I'm Jennifer McGill, a former Mouseketeer of the Disney Channel's all-new Mickey Mouse Club that started airing in 1989 and ran all the way through my senior year in high school.
You're like aging us.
Look, I mean, if I'm aging us, I mean, I feel like the show's called Club Rewind, right? So we're definitely looking back.
I am Summer Simmons, and I am Jennifer's best friend from the womb, essentially. Our moms were friends before we were friends, and Jen lived down the street from me. We grew up together. You know, I was a fan of the show, and so it was cool to see it and as a fan perspective, but then at the same time, I, got a backstage access because of being your best friend. And because I came every summer, everybody knew me. I kind of got, more free reign than a lot of other people did. So I got to see a lot of really, cool aspects of what the show was all about. Because of coming to see MMC, I majored in film in college. I wanted to know more about it, and I wanted to study it because I want to know more about this, and I want to, learn it from a different way. Nowadays in this world, I'm a teacher. I have been teaching school for over 20 years.
Summer has been a dancer ever since I can remember. She has studied film and TV production. She knows what she's talking about, but also there has been nobody else in my life besides my blood family who has been with me every step of the way through the audition process, through the pilot season, and then through the beginning to the end tapings of all 7 seasons of the all-new Mickey Mouse Club. We love talking about film and TV and production, and we really landed on what do we really want to talk about if we started a podcast, and it was, of course, unanimous. I mean, I loved The Princess Bride, but honestly, the Mickey Mouse Club gave me more, so.
Well, I'm slightly partial to why I love the Mickey Mouse Club, so I'm just saying.
We wanted to pool our resources and our heartstrings and our memories. And by the way, other guests that will be coming in throughout the season, wink, wink.
Why? What kind of guests would you be talking about?
I mean, I would say they are of the Mouska material.
Ooh.
We're going to send out invitations soon.
Mouse mail?
We've got some updated mouse mail technology. Yeah, we have like a Google Calendar invite situation that we may implement since it is now. Anyway, but to bring you a very personalized recap and laugh at it and love on it and pat some people on the back for just their great job and
rewind back to the 90s, to a great era of television and music and fashion and all the things,
and see how this show kind of makes us feel today. You and I have had performance in our hearts and on our minds and in our path really since we were kids. And we were 2 Texas rosebuds just in a small town with our 1 dance studio and our church musicals. And I have to say, we kind of bombed our first duo performance because we had a great time.
We didn't bomb it. We were stars. No one did a Christmas pageant as well as we did.
Well, we were supposed to play 2 pitiful peasant girls. I mean, I can only imagine what our parents went through to create this stained, ragged.
It was just like a sack dress.
A tunic, right? Like that's how pitiful we were supposed and wanting and lacking.
I mean, we like crawled, we fell, we had emotion.
What I remember is that our emotion was laughter. We were dirty and we were barefoot and we're staggering down our church aisle in this huge sanctuary, prestigious entrance, and we cannot stop laughing.
But there was emotion behind it. And yes, we sold it. I mean, people believed it.
Maybe. I don't know. I think they believed that we could not stop laughing. Even if we didn't meet our peasant goal, we were entertaining, and we, of course, entertained ourselves. My mother was one of the few small town vocal coaches. I remember she would have people over, summer included.
Yes, you were my demo on every one of my tapes for every song that I had to learn. So I still have a demo of you singing Razzle Dazzle. I have a demo tape of you singing Rocky Top.
These are cassette tapes. Summer, you have to find those because someday we're going to play those for Patreon fans.
Oh, 100%. I've got them somewhere. I've got all kinds of videos from all kinds of things. But yes, and what's amazing is that every song I learned through you singing it. Probably when you were like 9, 10, 11, and your voice was like massive even back then. I haven't listened to them in probably more than 20 years. And I remember I found them one day and I listened to them and I'm like, oh my gosh, immediately like takes you back to those moments. It was so cool.
That is incredible. You know, we had a few different tape players. So mom would probably play the tape and then through another like microphone or just like my first Sony, whatever it was, recording device, I would sing. So you're saying that I was a demo singer before I was anything.
Yep. You were the demo. I mean, like I can still hear in like, if I close my eyes, I can seriously still hear you singing, you know, good old Rocky Top, Tennessee. I can so hear your this little voice, like just like that 9, 10-year-old voice, but like Whitney Houston size, but as a 9, 10-year-old. I can still hear it in my head singing Rocky Top. Like that's the song I remember more than I think it's because that's the song I sang most in pageants. All these years later, I can still hear you singing that song.
I remember you showing up at church with your first pageant crown on.
You gave me my first pageant crown.
I did?
You did.
I thought you won it.
I did. You crowned me. You crowned me my first crown.
That's incredible. That I don't remember that, but
well, the only way I was ever going to win in a pageant is if you were not competing in said pageant.
Oh my gosh. But see, I remember you coming to church with your crown on, and it was just so precious. I'm sure everyone else thought we were nuts.
Truthfully, if you think about it, our childhood was like practice auditions for everything, for all the make-believe time and stories to entertain ourselves in the summer. Essentially, I was like your pre-audition practice for all these fabulous MMC auditions.
So Julie Erickson was the talent agent. She was a judge at my last pageant when I was 10 years old. And on a handshake with my mother, they agreed to see what she could do with me. And really, from what I remember, the first audition I went on was the Mickey Mouse Club. And I did meet Matt Casella at my first audition. I showed up in this oversized, you know, the sweater non-sweaters that are like they're bulky, but they're not for winter.
Yes.
That's what I was wearing.
Fashion.
On top of that, it was white, okay, which is horrible for camera, but we didn't know. And then I was wearing the little black dancer briefs with like tan dancer pantyhose. I had just gotten my braces off. My mouth felt weird and I was warming up in the hallway and I was there by appointment because of my agent. And he stuck his head out like a whole like slant. Hello. And he brought me in early because he heard me warming up outside. And he was like, get her in here. This is amazing. I did a jazz dance. I did a tap dance. I sang and I read a side. The side is a small excerpt from some sort of script. I don't remember what I read. I don't actually remember what I sang, but it was probably Home from The Wiz.
Probably.
I remember we were at the Galleria Mall in Dallas, Texas.
Yes, I do remember that.
All I wanted to do after that audition was go ice skating. Like, I don't remember being nervous about what he thought of me or like what was going to happen after this. I just wanted to go ice skating. So it was a great experience, but he actually found me and my mother downstairs at the ice skating rink and invited us back to come tape some things, probably the next day. He found us physically. Like, there were no cell phones. We didn't have a beeper. He didn't wait. He found us at the ice skating rink and invited us to come back the next day to be put on tape. And so I don't remember if I told you any of that or if it would have made any sense to us.
I do remember that.
you and I wouldn't have necessarily known that that was special or out of the ordinary for a casting director to chase you down in a mall. I went to my first trip ever to Disney World in Orlando, Florida, and auditioned with Chase and Tiffany, but then a whole new group. I've seen audition footage of me singing, and what interested me the most looking back on that footage was how low and, in my opinion, uneventful the snippet was of the song, like of the part that I viewed. The way that they had staged us for this filming, where each of us would come forward and do a little something for the camera. They had all of us sitting on a few risers, like in a conference room, like a ballroom conference room vibe at the Grand Floridian. And you can see in the back, like when other kids are performing, the rest of us are kind of like, oh, oof, I am tired of sitting here. This is a long day. Like I cannot believe we stayed still that long. I geeked out a little bit about Brad Kane being there because he was from the Rubik's Cube commercial. Wherever he was in his career, I was a fan already. So that was kind of crazy. Obviously, he did not come join us on the show.
You called me to tell me that you like made it onto this TV show and that you were going to be going to Florida. And I was like, you're moving to Florida? Like, it was like, wait, my best friend is moving? And it was like, no, we're just, mom and I are going, and like dad and Justin are staying here.
For the pilot, which was over the holiday season of 1988, towards the end of the year, my mother and I were the ones who went, and they carved out the pilot. And that's where it was very much a free-for-all, where you had everyone, and like the siblings and the parent and the Mouseketeers, and everybody was just exploding with newness. There was just so much going on that a lot of us for the first time were experiencing, especially with a parent and a sibling or two hanging out with us. You know, it was a lot to take in.
I mean, I remember Justin and your dad still being there in the beginning before y'all permanently moved, so that Justin could stay at school and your dad, was working. And so in the beginning, it was just like you and your mom in the apartment.
I didn't have this talk with the family, but it makes sense to me now looking back on footage I've seen, home video footage of my mother admitting that she would cry at night because she missed Justin, and that, we were all separated, and it was very hard. Justin was 6. I mean, come on. So it was a large sacrifice for all of us in different ways to allow me to have this experience. But then what I love about how that might have informed our family in the very beginning during the pilot, I love that we then decided to move fully to Orlando, Florida, so that we could stay a family unit year round and be together. Almost nobody else did that. It was just me, Lindsay, and Josh. Lindsay and Josh lived in neighboring towns to Orlando, so they were already situated. But of the 3 of us who stayed there the whole time through season 7, I was the only one of the 3 that actually had my family uprooted and moved to Orlando. And I am very grateful that we were able to come to that decision early and make that change, even though it was so sad to leave you.
Oh my gosh. That wasn't something that we experienced much as a kid. And, it was like, we didn't have the technology we have today. And I think that's what speaks so much about our relationship, and also our parents, and that we made an effort to keep that friendship going. Nowadays, we have social media. So even when people go away to college or they move away, you still have an easy way to keep in touch with people. But back then, we wrote letters to each other. We would, tell each other about like what was going on in our lives, just snail mail. And, we'd periodically get to call each other long distance because it cost money to call long distance. And then I started to visit, and you and your mom were still in the apartment. So I think it must have been between season 1 and season 2. And that was my first time at Disney World. And, my brother and I got to be in the audience and get to be a part of the show every summer. That became part of my summer vacation. We made that huge effort to maintain that friendship, where it would have been easy for us to have just, faded away and just reached back out in social media 20, 30 years later and be like, oh my gosh, I remember you as a kid. But we kept that relationship going in a huge part to our moms who allowed us to, call each other and make that effort with each other. Kudos to our mamas.
Thank you, mamas.
Thank you, mamas.
Yeah.
I just got a FaceTime message, a Facebook message from your dad. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like the universe is like sending signals to him, and your dad just sent me a Facebook message.
Tell him we need an interview. That would be hilarious. I would love to get my dad on the show.
Oh my gosh, yes, because I would love to hear his reaction and things, and your brother too. I would love to have Justin on too.
Yeah.
To like, as it was as a sibling.
Both of our families purchased the Disney Channel shortly after I signed up to work for the Disney Channel.
Absolutely.
It was very surreal.
I remember telling my mom, I was like, we have to get the Disney Channel. Like, I have to be able to see Jen on television. Like, we have to get the Disney Channel. These small town girls, this doesn't happen to small town people. This happens to people in Hollywood.
It's interesting how the two of us being best friends then had very special access to this huge production opportunity of the 80s and 90s New Mickey Mouse Club. It's pretty cool that both of us are fans of the show and fans of each other. And together, we remember a lot. Part of the goal of this show is to sort of check in with each other and put all of the pieces of our memories together and really show our audience a large and hopefully detailed and nostalgic view of our lives, not only growing up, but growing up with this show very much at the center of that on many levels.
Oh yeah, and like examining it from the perspective of you as somebody who was on the show, but also as fans of the show, and like what it meant to people our age and our generation to have something like this and to feel so connected to it. It's gotten lost because we don't have those reruns anymore. It's not in streaming. Unless you go onto YouTube and you find like old episodes or something, it's not a show you can watch. And so I think it's important for people to understand like what exactly this show meant to people at that time, because it was something we'd never seen before. And it really changed a lot of how television and child actors were and how they are today.
You're right, Summer. It was a completely new sort of upgraded version of having access to your favorite child stars, your favorite kid performers, your favorite kid personalities on television. And there was no other show like that. Yeah, back in the day, we had Saturday Night Live, late night talk shows that were variety shows. We even had Star Search. But we didn't have a variety show for kids on this level at all. When you fell in love with a child actor at that point, they were most likely playing a character on a sitcom. There's only so much you can do as a child actor with a role when it's possibly just something that airs once a week and you have just this many episodes, and then you have to wait a whole year to see something else. But with the all new Mickey Mouse Club, you had all the Mouseketeers doing comedic acting, interviewing guests, doing spoofs and, funny commercials and serious, fun, cool music videos, live performances. We were able to dress like us, and we had our own names, and we were us. We were our own personality, and we were diverse, and there were a lot of us.
And so as an audience, we got to know you as a person. There was a lot of opportunities for us to get to know you. They did a lot of like behind the scenes stuff, or they did things where they went to your hometowns and you got to talk about personal things that happened in your lives. And so as fans, we were able to kind of feel like, oh, I know this person. I feel like this person could be my friend. Monday through Friday, I'm sitting down watching my friends. Ironically, I was actually watching my best friend, but for, just everyday fans, they felt like I could relate to them. And that is just one of the many things that made, the Mickey Mouse Club so special.
What's so incredible is that our fans fell in love with just us. Yep. It was us. We were encouraged to be ourselves. And, sometimes it's difficult when you are trying to be a professional and trying to quote unquote act like a kid when you are a kid. You know, it is a hard balance, but I believe that production captured who we are as people, as young people, as kids. And I think that that is exceptionally cool. People fell in love with us and it was just us. That's very special.
Yeah. Disney just created this whole new thing, and y'all created essentially like a whole new channel, and y'all were essentially like the stars of the channel, the beginning stages of the Disney stars that came after you.
It's good to note that our casting director for the pilot and all 7 seasons, Matt Casella, he looked for authentic, genuine kids who were able to be kids. I was very raw, very unpolished, but that's part of what he liked about me, that I was just this, you know, cute little girl with this big voice, and he knew I loved what I did. He could see it in my eyes. He saw a spark, and I will never understand how I got that job over every other blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl in America and Canada.
It was your voice.
It was my voice. Look, it's not because I was gorgeous, right? I was literally like a pint-sized goober. So it was not about my looks at all. But yeah.
You had the best smile and you had the best hair.
Best smile and hair. I'm going to take it because I literally grew up on this show. And I think I did a lot of changing for the better as I got older. But there is no way for me to recapture exactly how talented and raw, yet like ready to learn and be in it fully, like 110% committed to that show I was. And Matt saw all of that. And I'm so glad that he hired me. I'm so glad I got that chance because I really fell in love with production being on that show. Some of my most vivid memories are scoping out every inch of that set in some of the first days of working on the pilot. I remember taking the camcorder around with my mom and dad and my brother and explaining everything that I had found on the set because they didn't know even as much as what I had absorbed in the last, few days. And I was so excited to show them the trap door and the secret door on the side and like all these things that I'm sure as we comb through the episodes, we might find it here and there. And I will definitely point out those moments, but it blew my mind that our stage rotated in the middle.
That was so cool. I remember sitting as an audience member and seeing that, and you're just like, that is just like the coolest thing, that the stage like moves.
Yeah.
It was pretty awesome.
It was so high tech. It was so advanced.
It was so cool.
So cool, so cutting edge. And there was no glass in the diner doors. And I just thought that was brilliant. The windows, the doors, no glass. And I'm like, oh, right, because of the glare for the camera and the light. Wow. It was production 101.
Yep.
In a time where no one got access to learn about production 101.
Absolutely not.
Especially when they're, a child.
When I got to visit you, there were so many things that I learned and all these different things that I was just like absolutely fascinated by this. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is what goes on when all these shows happen. This is so cool. I mean, it was really awesome.
Like, I want you to take yourself back to the first time you stepped into that environment. Take your kid brain back and try to pluck out something you remember learning or noticing.
When I came to visit you, that was like my first time ever like on a television set. And so it's just fascinating because there's like all these different lights and how the different lights worked and like where the lights hit. It wasn't just one camera. There was like 3 cameras, and how you shot from like 3 different angles and how the cameras moved around. It was so interesting in the production side of it. And then I can remember makeup and hair and your school trailer and the studio, like the recording studio. And what was so cool about the recording studio, and anybody who's ever been to, at the time, MGM Studios and ever did the backstage tour, they got to see the recording studio. I mean, it was just genius at the time because it allowed people to actually have access to this show, because on the backstage tour, you went by and you would see people in the recording studio. And so as you're recording, you could be like, hey, when I was in the recording studio with you and I'm sitting with the producers and stuff, and they come past you and you're like, I'm almost like part of the show. It was this cool piece, but it was just so smart of Disney at the time to say, we want even people who were coming to the parks to experience this show. So it was really cool.
And in the beginning, part of the premise of opening that park was to deliver a legitimate studio where you see tapings. And for many years, that's what they delivered. That's why we had the backstage tour. And I actually wrote my college entry essay entitled The Fishbowl, based on the backstage tour, and specifically the recording studio, post-production, that whole building. It's hard to explain growing up under a magnifying glass, kind of growing up in front of everybody, because even when we weren't taping the show and you're not on, you're either walking from one building to the other and there's a touring tram where you're waving, or you're like eating lunch and you're seeing them out the window. But specifically in the recording studio, I'd be closing my eyes and pouring my heart out and singing my face off. And then I'd stop and recover, and I notice there's a whole wall of strangers waving and flash photographying me, and I can't hear them. And I don't think they can hear me either, but they just saw me make all of these singing my face off faces. It's an odd way to calibrate and navigate your young life. Being literally a tourist attraction in a legitimate television, audiovisual studio. It was absolutely a magical time, because if I were not on the show, I would have loved and died to see everybody on the other side of that glass, living their life, making the magic, making the show, being in production. And I know it must have been exhilarating. People probably just wanted to jump through, the glass to come see us. And that's why I think then it's so incredible to have the live studio audience as well.
Yes.
To your point, Summer, what's cool about, let's say, the MMC set as well as the MMC cast members is when they would call cut, Damon was still Damon. And Jennifer, Lindsay, Rocky, everybody. And I think that must have been so special for fans to come see Mouseketeer so-and-so do all this fun stuff and let them be a part of that, be right there, seeing it all happen. I loved it at the time, but it was so brilliant and sort of a miracle that all of that actually happened the way it did, that it actually came to fruition. But I look back on the brave men and women who wrangled us together day in and day out and tried to direct us, tried to educate us and vocal produce us and choreograph us and do costume fittings and, fight us on earrings or whatever they were doing. And I remember through videotapes now how chaotic and how loud we all were. And we had parents and siblings, and it was chaotic. All of the men and women who worked with us were most likely younger than we are now. Can you imagine? Can you imagine being in your 20s or 30s and having to be an adult and get us all to where we're supposed to be? How did that show happen? How did we not kill everybody?
Yes, you had to be responsible and you had a job to do, and they expected you to be on time and all the things, but they wanted you to have fun. Y'all were running around and slamming doors and doing pranks and in each other's dressing rooms, poking your head in when somebody's getting hair and makeup done. Great conversations with, your hairstylist and the makeup artists and your costumers. The camera guys were awesome. I mean, they made connections with you. It was a fun place, and they made it so fun that it didn't feel like y'all were going to work. My vision of it was that y'all just loved doing what you were doing so much that you didn't look at it where you were like, oh my gosh, I have to go to work today. you got up and you were like, oh my gosh, I get to go to work today. I get to do this really awesome skit, or I get to sing this really amazing song, or oh my gosh, we're filming this really cool music video today. 12 years old with a job, but you loved every minute of it. You got paid to do really awesome, fun things that every kid would want to do. So I think that's what made it easy for them to somewhat, I guess, wrangle you, because they didn't take away the fun kid aspects of things and force you to try and be these adults. They wanted you to be a kid because that's what the show was all about.
And it is a fine balance. I do remember the adults being more exasperated, from time to time. I don't
Of
feel
course.
like I don't think everybody started the morning rolling their eyes at us, but I do think by the end of the day, they were like, and we're done, go home. All of us kids had entered this job at different levels of our professionalism and professional experience. Some kids had resumes, Braden and Brandy had been on Broadway. Say that 5 times fast. Braden and Brandy on Broadway. But some of us, me, did not have any actual professional credentials. And I think one of the first things I loved about the show was that I was immersed in a world where these kids not only were talented in their own rights, but they were diverse from each other. We were different and the same, right? And I knew I could learn from these kids. Like, I looked up to basically everybody and wanted to do the best job that I could, but I was also hungry. I was hungry for anything they wanted to throw at me. And so I can only speak for myself and say that it did not feel like a job to me. It was a calling for me. It is a thing. It's a thing, or I wouldn't be doing this show with you. It's a thing still. It's something I've always been in love with. Like, I've been in love with that show. And the best parts of what I took away from it, I've been in love with that for all this time. I don't think that's just happenstance. I think I was made to contribute to a variety show. I think being able to tackle so many different facets of performance, as well as learn so much about the production and what it takes to get to those parts of performance. I had no idea how much I would fall in love with all of that and then continue my career today, not only as an artist, but a performance coach and now president of an artist development company. It feels like that show was the beginning of my destiny.
Absolutely. And it's like you're now, and what's unique about you now is that you're working with young artists who want to, be child stars or be singers or whatever it is. And you understand, you've been there as a child. And a lot of times people in the industry are adults and they came into the industry as an adult. And so they don't understand it from a child's perspective and through a child's eyes. And you do. And that's something that's unique about all of you. And so when you work with 14, 15, 16-year-old kids who have these dreams and aspirations to make it in the industry and whatever area they're wanting to do, you can relate in a way that a lot of people can't relate. I think parents find a lot of comfort in that because you are able to talk to their child about things that somebody else can't talk to them about. That's what makes you so special.
One of the hardest things that I have to drive home to my clients and their families is how much hard work and discipline comes with a successful career, all of the classes and all of the drilling and being open to learning and direction and a whole team collaboration. For anybody, that is required. It is so not a singular journey, right? But then you throw in being a kid and having your family and everybody having to kind of get in it together and support each other and figure it out. You can't do that without a lifestyle change. This has to be a calling in this world, in this, new chapter I'm in as far as being president of an artist development company. Who else but the person who had to live it can convince you? If I can't convince you, then maybe you shouldn't be in this business. But I love it that now I'm sort of 180ing and going back to helping those kids are starting now where I kind of started. And I'm really grateful that the show gave me so much insight that I can still use today for kids today. I mean, I'm incredibly thankful. So I want to introduce our CR Gold Star segment. We will be highlighting a lucky club member at home. But more specifically, someone from each episode that we review here at Club Rewind. I would like to just give them a shout out on our show via awarding them a gold star, a CR Gold Star. The CR Gold Star goes to someone that really stood out in that episode, in a certain skit or a dance number, or even something that we remember of them from behind the scenes. For our pilot episode, Summer, I wanted to give a shout out to someone that I didn't get to meet in the audition process for the series, but as soon as I got on stage and saw them perform for the first time, my jaw dropped and I was like, holy cow, I want to sing like her someday. And my CR Gold Star, the first one ever on Club Rewind, goes to Raquel. Holy cow, that girl slayed it. I go back and watch stuff from her, Star Search from before, like part of her audition reel included some Star Search footage, actually a lot of Star Search footage. She sang everything. And I can't get over, now that I've been a vocal coach for, I don't know, over 20 years, I can't get over how beautiful and silky her vocals were. And I know they still are today, but she was one of my first wow moments when we started diving into pilot stuff. And for the record, even though none of this ever made it to the series outright, she and I were the only Mouseketeers chosen to tape a Hall of Fame segment back in the pilot when they were going to focus on giving out Mickey Awards to Mouseketeers, or at least we were just the guinea pigs for them figuring out how they wanted to do it for season 1. And Rocky did her bit and I did my song, but to be the other one, right? To be the other Hall of Famer who got the Mickey Award next to Rocky, that was incredible. So CR Gold Star for the pilot goes to Rocky, and we'll probably never see that footage. I don't know if I've seen it. I remember what I was wearing because I have a picture, and maybe I'll show it when I drop it into this edit.
Absolutely. I've listened to other podcasts from other television shows. So what I hope fans who listen and tune into this podcast, I hope that they think back on the feelings that they had as a kid and what this show meant to them in a new way, as a way to kind of introduce it to a new generation. Maybe you can sit down with your own kids and watch this show and, kind of explain like what a big deal it was for us at that age and what it did for you. I hope that this podcast allows people to rewind and look back on our own childhood, look back and think about what y'all as Mouseketeers did for us as audience members.
That was beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
I hope that someday we can look back on these first episodes of Club Rewind and go, oh, remember that time that the all new Mickey Mouse Club wasn't on Disney Plus?
Absolutely.
I hope this keeps the ball rolling and keeps everyone getting inspired, because yes, we have our VHS tapes and yes, there's stuff online, but it's fuzzy and we want to see it clear again.
Come on.
If you have any questions or comments about past and future episodes and topics, Summer, direct message us. Slide into our DMs on Instagram, Club Rewind Official.
Club Rewind Official.
And remember, you are now part of the club, Club Rewind. And so we want your feedback. We want your questions. We want your comments. You can email us at clubrewindofficial@gmail.com.
We absolutely want to hear from you. It's possible we will read your question on one of our podcasts. And for those of you that are interested in joining our Patreon, make sure that you do go to patreon.com and join our Patreon, because there are going to be these special things that we're going to dig out of our own archives. Someday you're going to get to hear the demo tapes of a 9-10-year-old Jen singing Rocky Top or Razzle Dazzle or any other demo tape that I can pull out, or maybe home videos of Jen and I back in the day. You will get access to some of these really awesome moments.
It's time to say goodbye.
See you soon online
For the next Club Rewind.
Bye.